So much for openness. I'm Brian Lilly with TheRebel.media. We were promised openness. We were promised transparency, and it would all be by default, but it isn't happening. I told you recently about government departments refusing to release basic information. First, CBC's outright refusal to release the cost of what they spent to build a special set for election night. A simple request for costs. Now we're being told by the Immigration Department that they're too busy working on Justin Trudeau's refugee plan to answer access to information requests. It's true. Just last week they told us there's no questionnaire used to screen would-be Syrian refugees. Apparently we're supposed to believe the officials charged with screening who can and cannot come to Canada, that they just don't ask questions. We're supposed to believe it's a rigorous screening, but there's no questionnaire. Now we're being told we'll have to wait almost a year for access to information questions to be answered because Justin Trudeau told his immigration department that getting Syrian refugees into Canada was really important. I'm not joking. I wish I was making this up. I wish it was a really bad comedy segment. Instead, it's Ottawa in the new era of Trudeau's openness in sunny ways. We asked basic questions of the immigration department through the Access to Information system. Now, this is a legally binding system that applies to all government departments and requires them to answer questions put to them within 30 days. And we're being told that our questions will be answered between 275 and 300 days from now. What were we asking? Simple questions about the refugee plan being administered. Specifically, any concerns raised about the list of refugees being provided by the Turkish government to Canada. Another sought documents regarding efforts to meet the religious needs of Syrian refugees being brought to Canada since November 4th, 2015. Period of the request covers from November 4th to December 3rd. And finally, when we heard that there were claims some of the refugees that came on the plane greeted by Prime Minister Trudeau were quarantined, we asked for any security or health concerns for any of the group of refugees who arrived in Toronto and were met by dignitaries, including the Prime Minister, on December 10th, 2015. These are the types of questions that government departments get every day from media outlets, researchers, academics, and average citizens interested in how the government works. In all my time covering politics, I've never seen one replied to a line that essentially says, sorry, we're too busy. But that's what the department's doing. They want us to believe that they're too busy for any public oversight on how they're executing a very serious file. I've already pointed out elsewhere that the Canadian forces, when they were in the middle of the Afghan war, or even now as they're bombing ISIS and training the Kurds, well, the Department of National Defense never said, hey, sorry, too busy to answer questions, we're at war. That the official, Hélène Bertrand, blames Prime Minister Trudeau and his mandate is very odd. I've never heard that before. Then there's the fact that this goes against a promise Trudeau made to the Canadian public to be open. Here he is this past summer launching the Liberal Plan for Change.
We'll make transparency a fundamental principle of our government. We'll reduce fees for access to information requests to $5 and extend it so it covers all ministers' offices, including the Prime Minister's office. We'll ensure that all government data is open by default, and we'll give you easy access to your own personal information.
Now, this wasn't the first time or the last time that Trudeau promised to break open the Access to Information system and make data easier to get. He tabled only one private member's bill in the last session of Parliament, and it was on access to information. Bill C-613 promised to make it easier to find out how our money is being spent, what government's up to. The bill read in part, government information must be made openly available to the public and accessible in machine-readable formats, and necessary exemptions to the right of access should be rare, limited, and specific. When he introduced the bill, Trudeau made it clear that he thought it was vital citizens could examine what governments were up to.
The ability of a citizen to access information on what a government is doing with their tax dollars in their name is one of the fundamental tenets of building confidence around government.
Now he's in charge, and departments under his watch are refusing to release information, basic information. You know that if this were the Harper Conservatives in charge, that it would be headline news. CBC would have 4 reporters on it. The Canadian press would be sending out updates hourly to all the newspapers, plus the private radio and TV stations that subscribe to their service. My point isn't to play the liberal versus conservative game on this. I only raise that to show the other media are not and will not pay attention to this. because they are playing the partisan game. I've been on the record for the need for greater access to information for years. I couldn't tell you how many stories, columns, or broadcasts I've done on the issue. Regardless of who's in power, citizens, taxpayers need to be able to check up on their government. The fact that bureaucrats are blaming their lack of response on the Prime Minister and his mandate, when that same Prime Minister also promised more openness, more transparency, only adds insult to injury. There are plenty of questions to be asked on the Syrian refugee situation, how it's being handled. Allowing bureaucrats to put off answering any questions until long after the 25,000 or possibly as many as 50,000 refugees are already here simply means they get to do their jobs as they see fit, with no oversight. And that, my friends, simply cannot stand.